Good morning. For this morning's devotional, I'd like to share a thought from last Sunday's sermon, which Hale preached on Come Grow With Us in Worship. Last spring I sent an email to Hale and didn't check it for spelling or punctuation and just hurriedly sent it. In my haste, I had written worship as woship, W-O-E-S-H-I-P. The fact that the E and the R are right next to each other on the keyboard make that a fairly common error. Rereading the email, I discovered the error and it got me to thinking. I was immediately struck with the thought that when I go to prayer, I launch immediately into my petitions, spending the majority of my time in prayer with God, seeking His divine intervention with either my woes or the woes of others. In my haste to bring those issues before Him, I forget to go to God with the respect, reverence, and worshipful attitude that He deserves. In my haste, I skip the pleasantries, if you will, and go right to the askings. My wife Connie and I went to Paris several years ago, and before we went, we were rather concerned about interacting with the Parisians, as they were by reputation reported to be rude and unkind to tourists. My wife had just finished reading a book about an American living in Paris who advised that before beginning any conversation or asking any question, one should always begin the conversation with bonjour. The writer goes on to explain that when a conversation begins with saying bonjour, it acknowledges the personhood of the one you are speaking to, is a sign of respect and a sign of good manners. When approached in this manner, there is a mutual bond or respect shown which is not present when one blurts out a question or request as if the person were an information booth or kiosk. And you know what? It worked. It worked beyond our expectations and shattered our preconceived notions, leaving us with very pleasant memories of Paris and its people. In fact, people went out of their way to help us. Jesus showed the disciples in both Luke's Gospel, chapter 11, verses 1 through 4, and in Matthew's Gospel in chapter 6, verses 9 through 15, how to pray. We all know the words, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. How often do we pray these words that they have become so rote that perhaps the meaning and the purpose and majesty of them has been dulled by their repetition? Jesus wanted the disciples and us to know what our priorities and what our frame of mind should be when we approach God. Our Father is an address not for some distant, detached, or uninterested deity, but the one who can and should approach as a loving Father with our best interests always at the forefront, willing and able to shower us with the best, even though at the time we may not be able to understand His ways. Jesus then continues, Hallowed be thy name. There is a respect, a dignity, an acknowledgement of God's holiness, divinity, and omnipotence that Jesus wants us to acknowledge when going to God in prayer. This got me to thinking that just as we approach the Parisians acknowledging their personhood, shouldn't we, in our approaching the God of the universe, begin our conversations, our prayers, and our petitions with an acknowledgement that He is indeed God, and put more worship into our conversations? I don't know about you, but I know I need to be more respectful, more worshipful, and more thankful when I speak to Him instead of only bringing Him my worship. Praise be to God that we can approach Him each in our own way and that He is always there to listen. Next time you go to prayer, give it a try so that we can continue to grow in worship. Have a blessed day.